Tugenden und Untugenden, a quiet gaze. A literary philosophical exploration of virtues, shadows, cultural roots, and the vast in between. Episode 1: Virtues. An introduction to the format. Chapter 1: Introduction. A room one enters. Before we begin, I want to invite you into the architecture of this format. Because Tugenden und Untugenden, a quiet gaze, is not a quick conversation, not a fast reflection, not a superficial thought. It is a path, divided into chapters. Not to impose order, but to create space. Spaces one can enter. Spaces that offer time. Spaces that allow depth. We live in a time in which many things have become loud. Opinions, demands, expectations, identities. And at the same time, many things have become quiet. Origins, inner measures, cultural roots, the subtle movements that shape character. Virtues belong to these quiet things. They do not push themselves forward. They do not shout. They wait. This format wants to give them space again. A space that does not moralize, but remembers. A space that does not judge, but observes. A space that does not instruct, but accompanies. Every episode begins with a poetic opening, a quiet thought that unlocks the door. Then comes a literary scene, a small story that lets the theme be felt before it is understood. Only then do we turn to origins and history, the roots, the transformations, the old meanings. We look at their relevance today in a world that changes faster than we can grasp. We ask how virtues live in everyday life, in small gestures, in decisions, in moments that shape us. A dedicated chapter explores cultural perspectives, German-speaking traditions, regional colors, historical imprints, and international contrasts that reveal how differently people live the same inner movement. Then follows a philosophical reflection, where we question assumptions, shadows, and cultural self-images, not to judge, but to understand how virtues can tilt, and how vices emerge. We speak of strengths and shadows, of the balance between excess and lack. We listen to the language, idioms, proverbs, literary images that have carried virtues for centuries. And we offer literary reference, small signposts for those who wish to go deeper. At the end of each episode stand reflection questions, gentle impulses that accompany rather than instruct, and a poetic closing that turns what was heard into an inner image. A quiet outro completes the circle. This format is made for depth, for stillness, for people who want not only to hear, but to understand. It is timeless, meant to be listened to chapter by chapter. A room one enters, and in which one meets oneself. Chapter 2: Poetic Scene. A small story about balance. There are moments when the world becomes quieter, not because the noise has vanished, but because something within us steps back and creates space for another way of seeing. Virtues belong to these quiet things. They are like threads running through time. invisible yet carrying. They hold together what would otherwise fall apart. They remind us of something we did not learn, but inherited. Perhaps virtues are not rules, but memories. Memories of what makes us human, of what remains when everything else changes. And perhaps that is what we need today. A quiet gaze on what carries us. This chapter is a breath, a pause, a gentle beginning. Chapter 3, Literary Scene. A small story about balance. The morning was cool, and a thin mist lay over the river. On the old wooden bridge stood a man, hands in his pockets, eyes resting on the slow movement of the water. He looked as if he had lost something without knowing what it was. A woman approached, a small basket on her arm, covered with folded cloth, as if it held something that did not need to be seen. She stopped beside him, not intruding, simply arriving. "You look as though you are searching for something," she said softly, a voice that did not push but opened. The man nodded. "I am trying to understand what's missing," he said. "I feel as if I'm always moving, but I don't know where to." The woman set her basket down. "Perhaps nothing is missing," she said. "Perhaps you are simply carrying too much." He looked at her. "Too much responsibility?" "Perhaps," she replied. "Or too many expectations. Or too much of what others call virtue, but has become weight for you." The man fell silent. The river slid beneath them, calm and unbothered. "You know," she continued, "virtues are like things we keep in our pockets. Some are light, some are heavy. Some we keep out of habit, long after they have stopped serving us." "And vices?" he asked. She smiled gently. "Vices are what we hold on to, even when we know they do not help us." He exhaled. "So what should I do?" "Maybe," she said, "take everything out and hold it in your hands, and keep only what truly strengthens you." She lifted her basket again. "The rest may go." The man watched her walk away. He did not know whether he felt lighter, but he knew he could begin. Chapter 4, Origins and History. Virtues are among the oldest cultural tools of humanity. They did not arise in books, nor in schools, nor in religious systems, but in the everyday fabric of living together. In villages and families, in communities that needed ways to coexist. In the ancient world, virtues were not moral prescriptions, but orientations that made life easier. Aristotle spoke of the mean, the balance between two extremes. Courage lies between cowardice and recklessness. Temperance between rigidity and impulse. Generosity between miscellaneous and excess. Virtue was something once practiced, like a skill that grows over time. Not perfect, not absolute, but human. In the Middle Ages, the view shifted. Virtues became religiously charged, turned into rules, duties, expectations. Yet even then, they remained something people lived, not merely obeyed, a form of orientation in a world that was often uncertain. With the modern age came new values: rationality, progress, individualism. Virtues seemed old-fashioned, like relics from another era. But they did not disappear. They simply became quieter. Today, in a time of acceleration and complexity, they return, not as moral demands, but as an inner compass that helps us locate ourselves in a world that changes faster than we can grasp. Virtues are not a backward glance. They are an inheritance, carried through centuries, and perhaps that is why they matter so deeply now. Chapter 5. Meaning Today. We live in a time in which many things are possible and many things are uncertain. Life paths, relationships, work, identity. Everything has become more open, more fluid, more diverse. A gift and a challenge. In earlier times there were clearer roles, clearer expectations, clearer ideas of what was good, right, and proper. Today there are options, many, sometimes too many. And within this abundance arises a quiet longing for orientation. Virtues can offer this orientation, not as rigid rules, not as moral demands, but as inner attitudes that help us remain ourselves in a shifting world. Patience in a world that accelerates us. Composure in a world that overwhelms us. Courage in a world that unsettles us. Moderation in a world of extremes. Gratitude in a world of comparison. Virtues are not nostalgic concepts. They are tools for navigating complexity without losing our center. Perhaps that is why they reappear today, in conversations, in books, in therapy rooms, in coaching, and in the quiet moments when we ask who we want to be. Virtues are not a step backward. They are an inner compass, guiding us through a time in which external signposts disappear more quickly than we can follow them. Chapter 6. Everyday Life and Application. Virtues do not live in grand moments. They live in the small, in the quiet decisions no one sees, in the gestures we do not plan, in the reactions that rise within us before we have time to think. Patience does not reveal itself in extraordinary situations, but in waiting at the checkout line, in listening when someone repeats themselves, in staying present when something takes longer than we wish. Composure does not appear in philosophical discussions, but in the moment we do not answer immediately, do not judge immediately, or not act immediately. Courage is not found in heroic acts, but in speaking a difficult truth, setting boundary, or beginning a conversation we have avoided. Moderation is not an ascetic ideal, but the ability to stop at the right time, with work, with worry, with comparison. Gratitude is not a grand gesture, but a brief pause in which we notice that something is good as it is. Wisest, too, live in everyday life. They are not moral failures, but signals. Impatience shows we are overloaded. Anger shows a boundary has been crossed. Envy shows a wish within us. Pride shows we are protecting ourselves. Lethargy shows we are exhausted. Excess shows that something is missing. Virtues and vices are not opposites. They are movements. They show where we stand and where we might grow. Perhaps that is their quiet power. They accompany us in every step, in every decision, in every moment in which we meet ourselves. Chapter 7: Cultural Perspectives. Virtues are not the same everywhere. They carry the landscapes in which they were formed, the languages that name them, the stories that have accompanied them for centuries. In the German-speaking world, virtues often have something earthy, something grounded, something shaped by work, reliability, and moderation. Words like Fleiß, Besonnenheit, Anstand, Treue, Genügsamkeit, echo fields, workshops and communities in which people depended on one another. In Mediterranean cultures, virtues often carry a warmer, more open tone. Generosity, hospitality, heartfulness, honor. They reflect a life lived more in the public, in encounters, in relationships, in shared spaces. In the Anglo-American world, virtues are often tied to individual responsibility, fairness, integrity, courage, self-restraint. They emphasize the individual who is accountable for themselves. In East Asian traditions, virtues are closely linked to harmony, respect, consideration, measure, self-discipline, and the ability to place one's actions within a larger whole. And yet, despite all differences, there is a quite common thread. In every culture, virtues are answers to the questions of how we can live together without wounding one another. Perhaps that is their deepest core. Virtues are cultural mirrors. They show what a community values, what it protects, what it preserves, and what it wishes to pass on. And at the same time, they are alive. They change with time, with people, with the challenges of an era. Virtues are not a fixed inheritance. They are a living dialogue between past and present, between what was and what may become. Chapter 8: Philosophical Reflection. When we speak of virtues, we do not speak only of behavior. We speak of a particular way of seeing the world and ourselves within it. Philosophically, virtues are not possessions, not objects one has, but movements that unfold between us and the world. Aristotle called virtues hexeis, habits of being, formed through practice, not innate, not unchangeable, but something that grows as we live it. Virtues, then, are no ideals, but paths. Paths we walk again and again, sometimes steady, sometimes hesitant, sometimes searching. And vices? They are not the opposite. They are signals. They show where we have slipped out of balance, where we give too much or too little, where we lose ourselves, where we protect ourselves, where we hold on even though we could let go. Philosophically, virtues and vices are two sides of the same human movement. Virtues arise where we meet ourselves and choose not to act reflexively but consciously. They arise in the space between impulse and action, between feeling and response, between desire and reality. Perhaps this is the deepest thought. Virtues are not moral demands, but forms of freedom. The freedom to act differently than habit would dictate. The freedom to shape ourselves. The freedom to grow instead of repeating. Virtues are not the destination. They are the way on which we find ourselves again and again. Chapter 9. Strengths and Shadows. Virtues appear clear at the first glance. They seem good. Right. Something to strive for. Yet, like all human things, they carry light and they cast shadows. A virtue becomes a strength only when it stands in balance. When it slips out of balance, it can turn into its own distortion. Patience is a quiet strength. It allows things to grow without forcing them. But too much patience can become passivity, a waiting that wears us down. Courage opens paths we would not otherwise walk. But courage without measure becomes recklessness, a pushing that destroys more than it creates. Composure protects us from impulsive decisions. It offers clarity where emotions grow loud. But excessive composure can harden into rigidity, hesitation that holds us back. Generosity connects people. It builds trust, warmth, closeness. But when it becomes boundless, it leads into exhaustion, to giving until we are empty. Even self-discipline, often seen as the foundation of many virtues, can darken when it becomes too strict. Then it turns into harshness, self-judgment, an inner pressure that takes our breath. Virtues are not perfect forms. They are movements that must be balanced again and again, between too much and too little, between excess and lack. And vices? They too have two sides. Anger can destroy, but it can also show how a boundary has been crossed. Envy can hurt, but can also reveal a hidden wish. Lethargy can paralyze, but it can also signal that we need rest. Perhaps this is the essential insight. Virtues and vices are not fixed categories. They are indicators, movements, vibrations. They show where we stand and where we might grow. Chapter 10. Language and Expressions. Language is a mirror of our values. It reveals what a community considers important, what it protects, what it praises, and what it criticizes. Virtues and vices live not only in actions, but also in words. Many expressions we use every day carry traces of ancient virtue traditions, so familiar that we hardly notice them. Patience is a virtue. It sounds like a proverb, yet it is a reminder that patience is not innate, but practiced. To take heart is a poetic way of naming courage, the moment we act even though we are afraid. With measure and balance echoes the ancient teaching that virtue lies in the middle, not in the extremes. To give someone the floor is an expression of respect, of listening, of acknowledging another's voice, a small gesture carrying a large attitude. Vices, too, leave linguistic traces. To lose one's temper, to be consumed by envy. Pride comes before a fall. To let oneself go. These expressions are not moral judgments, but observations, evidence that humans have wrestled with the same inner movements for centuries. Language makes virtues visible and accessible. Words can name something we feel, but cannot yet grasp. Perhaps that is why virtues remain alive in language. They remind us that we are not alone with our strengths and our shadows. Language is not merely a tool. It is a space in which virtues and vices take shape. Chapter 11. Literary References. Virtues have accompanied humanity for millennia, and many thinkers have tried to understand them, to describe them, to arrange them. Literature on virtues is therefore not only knowledge, but a window into a history of human self-reflection. Those who wish to go deeper will find in philosophy, psychology, and cultural history a wealth of voices that approach the same questions from different angles. What makes a good life? How does character form? How do we find measure and balance? How do we navigate our shadows? Some works often mentioned include Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics, a foundational text of virtue ethics. Aristotle describes virtues as states of character that lie between two extremes and develop through practice. Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologiae, a medieval perspective on virtues, deeply theological, yet influential for understanding moral formation. Immanuel Kant, groundwork of the metaphysics of morals. Not virtue ethics in the classical sense, but a work that shows how closely freedom, duty, and moral actions are intertwined. Alistair MacIntyre, A Virtue, a modern exploration of why virtues regain importance in contemporary society. Martha Nussbaum, Creating Capabilities, The Fragility of Goodness. Philosophical perspectives that connect virtues with emotion, responsibility, and social structures. Positive Psychology, Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson, a scientific approach that examines how character strengths develop and how they influence well-being. These works are not obligations, they are invitations. Invitations to go deeper if one feels that virtues are more than old words from another time. Perhaps that is the essential point. Virtues are not a closed chapter. They are an ongoing conversation, carried across centuries and continue today in our own way. Chapter 12. Reflection Questions. Virtues are not a theoretical concept. They become alive only when we relate them to our own lives. These questions are not tasks, but invitations. Invitations to pause for a moment and sense your own inner movement. You may want to hear them aloud, carry them quietly, or answer only one. There is no right or wrong. First, Which virtue accompanies you most strongly in everyday life, consciously or unconsciously? Sometimes it is one we have learned, sometimes one we need, sometimes one that protects us. Second, which vice appears most often, and what might it be trying to tell you? Vices or signals, not judgments. Third, where do you lose balance most easily? Between too much and too little often lies a quiet hint of what we are missing. Fourth, which virtue would you like to strengthen? Not as an ideal, but as an inner attitude. Perhaps patience, perhaps courage, perhaps composure, perhaps something else entirely. Fifth, which virtue have you inherited from your surroundings, and from whom? Virtues are often heirlooms we do not notice until we look at them. Sixth, which vice has protected you once? This too happens. Anger can set boundaries. Envy can reveal a wish. Lethargy can shield us from overwhelm. These questions are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be lived. Chapter 13. Poetic Closing. Virtues are not distant ideals. They are movements. Quiet, human, imperfect, woven into the rhythm of our days. Perhaps the most important thought is this: we do not walk these paths alone. We walk them with the people who shaped us, with the stories we carry, with the cultures that formed us, with the questions that return again and again. Virtues are not demands, they are companions. They remind us that balance is not a state, but a way of moving. And perhaps that is the quiet gift of this episode. To sense that within us there is a place that knows the way, a place that remembers what strengthens us, what steadies us, what brings us back to ourselves. This closing is a breath, a gentle return, a small light to carry with you as you step into your day. Chapter 14. Meditation. Before we begin, find a position that feels steady, a place where your breath can move without effort, without intention, simply as it is. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands rest. Let your breath arrive in its own rhythm. With every inhale, a quiet opening. With every exhale, a gentle release. Imagine a small space within you, a space that feels clear, quiet, unhurried. A space that belongs to you and moves with you through every day. In this space, virtues are not demands. They are movements. They rise and fall like a breath, like light, like the rhythm of your own steps. Sense patience as a widening. Sense courage as a steady warmth. Sense composure as a softening of the inner air. Sense gratitude as a small light that glows from within. You do not need to reach for anything. Everything that matters is already here. Quiet, present, alive. Let this space expand just a little. Let it become a place you can return to. A place that remembers what strengthens you, what steadies you, what brings you back to your center. Take one more breath. Deep, slow, full. And when you are ready, let your attention return to the room around you, carrying with you the quiet movement you found here. Closing message. Thank you for walking with me through the first episode of Tugenden und Untugenden, a quiet gaze. Perhaps something in you has softened. Perhaps something has opened. Perhaps a small thread of clarity has begun to form. Virtues are not distant ideals. They are companions. Quiet, steady, human. They remind us that balance is not a destination, but a way of moving. Take with you whatever felt true. A thought, a breath, a moment of recognition, a small inner shift. This path continues, chapter by chapter, movement by movement, always in your own rhythm. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving this quiet space a place in your day. We meet again in the next episode of Tugenden und Untugenden, a quiet gaze. If you feel called to wander a little deeper, scripts, audio pieces and small companion materials are available on my channels including YouTube and Payhip. Perhaps one of them will walk a little further with you.